Hello, my spooky friends. I'm John, your host, and welcome to another episode of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. So, before we get into this, one thing I want to say thank you to all my listeners out there. And if you're a new listener, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. There's a lot of podcasts out there you can listen to, and that you choose to listen to this podcast. Many blessings to you because we have lots of fun here. And I'm truly excited for two things tonight. I'm so excited. First thing, before we get to our special guest, I have Erin. She's from Patriot Paranormal. You may have seen her because she has a podcast. She's working some things out. If she wants to talk about it, she can. If she doesn't, totally cool.
Oh, I will.
But she has a great podcast she's working on. I'll let her, talk about that. But she's going to join me when she has time and when she can co-host. I'm a little bit selfish. I have to admit this, Erin and Melissa. I would love to have Erin on as many times as I can, but that's just me being selfish. So she can be on there. So you will see her on when she can be on. She has a great knowledge of the paranormal. She is a paranormal investigator. Shout out to Patriot Paranormal. Please check out everything they do on all their social media sites. They do an excellent job. They are a great group. I've had them on episodes before. We'll have them back on again. Please check them out.
Yes.
But
thank you.
Melissa, and I'll get back to you, Erin, because I don't want to keep Melissa waiting because she was very nice to join me on this podcast. And let me talk a little bit about Melissa, and then I'll let her obviously fill in anything she would love to fill in. So I had Joshua from Phantom Detectives LLC. Go check out the episode. It's a great episode. They have, again, a great paranormal group. They have a lot of different things they're into. Dark matter news, their own paranormal investigation team, which they do help people. I know a lot of my paranormal investigators, they're kind of like, do I help or do not? What do I do, right?
Right.
But they will help you, so please look them. One thing that I said to Joshua, I said, hey, I see some great members of your team, and one was Melissa. And so, Melissa, before I get to the bio, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and being on that team?
Okay. So, I am the team's psychic medium. That's my main role. I also do paranormal investigating as well. I don't just sit back and just tune into the spirits. I will also use the equipment. And what I like to do is I prefer to go into each investigation blindly, especially when we go into historic places, mansions and museums, and I truly don't know the backstory. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if what I'm picking up on matches the history of the location.
Yeah.
And what's really cool too is that sometimes our equipment will verify what I'm tuning into as well. So it's nice how all of the pieces of the puzzle will come together. Now, when it comes to home investigations, I will know the backstory because the person sends us, there's an intake form and they'll describe their experiences. So I know about what I'm walking into, during those situations. So, but yeah, I like to see what I'm tuning into when I go into these, like I said, these historic places. It's a lot of fun to see if there is any accuracy,
Right.
What I'm sensing can be verified later on. So it's a lot of fun. That's the best part of what I do. That's what I enjoy the most. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Wow, I hit on this. That's super cool. And yeah, I mean, sometimes certain things have been jaw dropping. And I'll have to talk about certain things during our cases of what I picked up on and the accuracy, because sometimes I don't believe myself. I'm like, am I just imagining this? But then later on, when there's something specific I hit on, I'm like, wow, like I'm speechless.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Erin can speak to that too, right? Erin, when you've been on investigations, right? You know, some things you've discovered that kind of, right? Maybe threw you for a little bit of a loop.
It's so funny because, like, literally everything you just said can totally relate to, you know, and it's not to say I haven't been wrong. You know, sometimes something will come through and it just does not match the place that we're at. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird, but you know, maybe it's something else going on that, you know, I just have no idea about. But I agree with you totally, Melissa. I love to not know. Whereas my teammate Laura, she is like the researcher. She likes to know. And so, and I always tell her, don't tell me. And she's just like, and she tries really hard not to tell me everything, but sometimes, like, she's like, oh yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, Laura. But right? She does all that and she finds out all this stuff, but I'm like, yeah, don't tell me, let me try to feel what I can feel, you know, and so I prefer that myself, but everybody's different, you know. Like, God, that's just so funny when you were saying that. I was like, so I understand everything she just said.
Yes, you can relate. Yes, definitely. And that's Joshua. Joshua's our team historian. So he knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, and I think that makes a good mix, though. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think it makes a great mix, because if you don't know anything at all, then how can you validate stuff when you're there? And I mean, you know, there's famous places that you're going to go to that everybody kind of knows anyways, you know, but you know, even some of those places, we've still learned some things that we were like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So Melissa, you have, according to your bio, you had experience with spirits when you were a young child. Can you elaborate on that a little bit better?
Yes. I would say, my goodness, for as far back as I can remember, I kid you not, I had to have been maybe 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I know it sounds so cliche, but it was always the middle of the night when they decided to make their presence known. And the only thing I can think of is maybe because it's during that time, the world is quiet. Our minds are quiet, and maybe it's just easier for them to reach out to us.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a child, and listen, even as an adult, I especially as a child, I didn't welcome that. It freaked me out and it frightened me.
Absolutely.
And the best way I could describe it, my vocabulary at the time was using the word monster. That's the only way I could describe it to adults. You know, in my family, obviously my mom and dad, and I feel that today it seems like people are more accepting and receptive to that sort of thing. Back when I was growing up, you know, I mean, I'll call myself old, but back in late 70s.
We're on the same boat, Melissa. We're on the same boat.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, hold on. What do you consider old?
20-something anymore. I wish I was. But, but
and we all know John is a...
Hey.
I know. But can I ask you a question, Melissa? So, because I was kind of similar. Now, I don't have like what you have. I actually don't consider myself psychic. I think I have, what is the word, you know, sensitivities, you know, but I don't, you know, I mean, I have had some premonitions or whatever when, you know, throughout my life, and I do sense things, but I don't, like, I can't see stuff, and, you know, I'm like, oh my God, it's definitely a female or definitely a child. Like, that happens occasionally. But when you were a child, because I just totally related to what you said, like, I would sense things, I would kind of just know things, I would feel things, and then I would say something to my parents. I didn't say monster or anything, but I was like, oh, you know, this happened, and they were like, and they weren't mean, like, oh, you know, but they didn't really want to talk about it.
Yes.
And so how was that for you as a child? Because you're right. Nowadays, people are very much more accepting. And like I said, it wasn't like my parents were mean. They just didn't understand.
Yes.
So how does that relate to you when you were a child?
Oh, yes, pretty spot on. I think my parents also didn't understand. And I think that's
Right.
that's the
Right.
place they were coming from.
Right.
So it was easy because they didn't understand. It was easy for them to just chalk that up to my imagination.
Yes.
Yeah. So and the sad thing is, as a child, you know, you're having these experiences and you have to keep them to yourself.
Right.
And this actually continued into my teen years. And I was the teenager, like many. I mean, I know I'm probably not the only one. I slept with the lights on.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I'm like, how on earth did I do that? Because I need a pitch dark room now. I'm like, light in my face.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny because even when I get scared and you know how you can scare yourself so easily, you know, you're like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know, and everything's a noise now, you know, but I have to have it pitch black.
Definitely. So now, even as an adult, I don't have those experiences as often as I did.
Okay.
And I noticed that it's funny, once I accepted that I have this ability and I stopped allowing it to frighten me. I mean, I still have my moments, of course, but when I came to a place of acceptance, I seem to have had it a lot less.
Right.
So it's interesting how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. John.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just saying, it seems like the spirit world was, you know, they were trying to really tell me, hey, we're here. And until I finally said, okay, I'll accept this. I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with it, is when said it hasn't been as so much in my face now.
Yeah.
So I got a million questions for you, Melissa.
Sure.
You've opened up a whole big box of questions for me.
Right.
First of all, was your house haunted?
Good question.
Yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I always joke and say I don't feel like my homes were haunted as a child.
Right. Okay.
Not then and not now. The one who is haunted is me. I'm haunted.
I was just gonna ask that, Melissa.
There you go.
And sorry, you guys, if it's so weird the way I have my camera set up. So you know, if I have to like almost look at myself for it to look like I'm looking straight. Otherwise, I'm like, so I apologize if I keep looking around. I'm trying to figure this damn thing out because I just moved my studio around. So I'm like, oh my God. So sorry about that. I'm not trying to be rude. So I was just going to ask you that because that really threw a question immediately at me. So I wonder how many people's houses are not haunted, but they actually are.
Yes.
And then they don't know it. You know, because can't that manifest into other family members if a person is haunted?
And from my own experience, so I mean, I have my husband and my daughter, and they have not had experiences. Now, my daughter believes, you know, she does have abilities, but I don't feel that what is happening to me is exactly happening to her.
Right. Okay.
So I just feel that the spirit world knows who they can reach out to. We're like a lighthouse. That light is flashing. And if other people, you know, in the home do not have that light turned on per se, then maybe that's why they're just simply coming to me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That would make sense. Yeah.
So, Melissa, when is the first time you knew, and I'll just call it the gift, because it's a lot easier to say if I keep saying medium and blah, blah, blah. When did you first know, like, wow, I think there's something going on here. Like, this is serious now. I'm starting to see things. I'm starting premonitions. This is coming in stronger.
Yeah. I would say that once I started having those experiences with spirits in the middle of the night as a young child, and then it seems like as I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together, that I realized that I could sense energy early on. I was afraid that I had this fear. I remember that if I held somebody's hand, that they would be able to receive my thoughts and that I would be able to sense when they were thinking. So now that I look back, I feel like that I was just very in tune to energy. Energy always seems to be the magic word when it comes to, you know, all of these, everything in the realm of this.
Right.
definitely as a young child. And I feel that as I became a teenager, I did what I could to tone it down, to ignore it, to stifle it, because I knew there was something different. And I also knew that talking about this with the average folks, I was afraid that I would be labeled a weirdo.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
Right.
Oh God.
Right.
I
yeah.
know that. Yeah.
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 Did you ever have a time when you were younger that maybe something you had a premonition about, maybe your mom or dad getting into a car accident or something like that, or something, you know what I mean? Like something serious was going to happen. Did you ever have a time like that where maybe you were like, Mom, could you not go to work today? And your mom like going, well, what are you talking about, honey? I don't,
Oh,
you gotta go
yeah.
to work. What are you talking about? Ever happened
Right.
to you?
I would say that it was probably more in dreams. It was more in dreams. I would dream of something significant happening and then it would happen. So I can't,
Right.
it's funny because I feel like it happened so much through dreams. And this was during my teen years. And I can't really remember specific things, but it just seemed like, okay, I saw this in a dream. Something happened.
Right.
Somebody reacted strongly. So that is probably the time that was during the time of how I received premonitions. So, and it's funny because this ability seemed to, it would change over the years. How I would receive information would change. So I don't get those. I don't have those dreams now, but maybe it's now manifested into something else.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Like with your growth or something, you know?
Yeah. It seems
Okay.
like with time, I would receive that information. And
Right.
now it's just randomly. Now it's like my mind is quiet and I'll just pick up on something. And that seems to be when I'm receiving that information. I'm not searching for
Okay.
it. It'll just be
Oh,
random.
right.
The phone
Yeah.
will ring. Yeah. The phone will ring. Here's an example. I will receive a phone call from somebody who I do not speak to often. Someone who I haven't
Right.
spoken to in maybe months or years. I'll just think about them and then they call and that's when I'm just absolutely floored. And then it's
Yeah.
after when I go to say to them, I was literally just thinking about you, and I'm thinking they probably
Yeah.
don't believe me, but that's the kind of stuff that happens now. That is the way it's manifested.
Yeah.
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 Would you please excuse my naivete on this one, but I always look at it like with mediums where you like tune in again, we're old, meaning maybe you can relate to this. You tune in a radio, right? And it's like, and then you finally get the station in, right? And it comes in clear. Is it kind of like that? I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
Oh, I would say that's a pretty good way to describe it. And that's the way I've described it to other people. It's like you are just tapping into this station, into this channel, and you're doing it unintentionally.
Right.
So, yeah.
But now, though, that you've, kind of grown into this, because it sounds like you're very comfortable with it and you sort of know how to control it, if you like. Is that something you can also turn off, So like you're going into a shopping place and there's a ton of people and you're like, oh my God. And obviously there's probably a lot of spirits. And so are you able to say, okay, I'm out for a day with my family. I'm just enjoying myself. Stay away, guys, back off. Are you able to do that?
Yes. And it took time. And that's the perfect example.
Yeah.
That is the perfect example because I mean, that's exactly what would happen. I would dread going food shopping because not only would you be tuning into spirits, you would be tuning into everybody's
emotions. Yeah.
I would want to literally break down and cry in the supermarket.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Why does going food shopping have to be an emotional experience?
You're like, because it costs so much right now.
Oh yes.
Yeah. You like grab the cereal box, you start crying. Why?
It's $10. But I do know, it's so funny because I don't have the abilities you do, but I can so relate to that because I do feed off of people's emotions. Like and I have there's, several people in my life I call energy vampires. And it's like I go around them,
Oh,
and within
right.
an hour, I'm just like, oh my
Yes.
God, I can't do this, and then after spending, some time with them, I am so emotionally drained and just so, and it's not to say I don't socialize, but I've definitely changed the way I interact with a lot of people now, because it can be very draining. And I'm actually learning how to go, stop, don't worry about that. And
Mm.
before I see the person that I consider an energy vampire, which I hate to say that because I love
Oh,
them,
no.
but it's just like,
Yeah.
holy shit,
Just
Mhm.
the people that you love, that
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a friend or a family member, and you're like, my
Yeah.
goodness, I know I have to be around this person, and they
I know.
are exhausting.
It's hard work. But now I've learned to like put like kind of a protection of prayer and just say, you know what, you've got to do the right thing, which is be of service and loving to this person,
Yes.
and so that's what I learned to do now so that I can spend time with them, because I don't want to be a selfish asshole, because I can do that very easily and be like, nope, busy, can't hang out with you. And I don't want to do that because I do love this
Mhm.
person, they are
Yeah.
dear friend. And so I like learned to put those protections in place so that I can spend quality time and
Right.
get out of my selfishness. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's like, and you're right. It takes time. It takes time to
Yeah.
establish those boundaries, and you're doing it in
Right.
a loving way, because that they're not bad people. It's just,
Right.
they have a lot of inner work to do
Mm.
with themselves, and they portray
Oh,
that onto everybody else. And
I love that. Love the way you just described that. That is so perfect. Yeah, they
Yeah.
need to work on themselves. And that
Yeah.
is exactly just describes it so well, because they're not a bad person.
Right.
But yeah, their internal conflicts come out, and I read it, and my body's like, so I love the way you just described that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no.
And Melissa, so you have studied to be a medium, correct?
Yeah, that's so cool.
So please tell us more about that. Yeah.
Sure, definitely. First and foremost is that I had to accept and embrace this ability.
Mm.
I really did. And then I said, okay, well, what do I do with it? What do I do with it, and how do I work with this? So reaching out to teachers to help me figure out what is going on, and I feel that the best way to describe it is the mechanics of mediumship. What's happening inside of us? How are we receiving this information?
Right.
And that's what I had to learn first and foremost.
Mm.
So there's something that I had to learn about, and maybe you're familiar with, is our Clair senses.
Mm.
And the
No.
first, I want to say first and foremost, the number one that we hear all the time is the word clairvoyance. And
Right.
I always chalked that up, and maybe other people do as well, as describing somebody with psychic abilities. That we just, it's a catch-all phrase. It's a catch-all term. They're clairvoyant.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
clairvoyant, yes, is only one of our clairs. That's our ability to see. That's our ability to internally.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So, the best way I can describe it, our Clair senses it's our internal senses. So just like we have our external senses, we have our internal, we have our clairvoyance, we have our clairaudience. That's our ability to internally hear information.
Okay.
Claircognizance is our knowing. It's just we know this information. We don't even question it. We receive it and we know it.
That's
And
interesting.
Yes, and another strong Clair, they say feeling is our superpower, and that's clairsentience. So a lot of us are feelers. We feel that information and we feel it so deeply. And these clairs, to take it even a step further, it's connected to our chakras, our chakra system. And there's so many other clairs, but they seem to be the main ones that I described.
Right.
Some people have the ability to taste, and that's called like clairgustance, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Yes. So think of our clairvoyance is our third eye. That again, that seems to be the most familiar.
Right.
Our our clairaudience is our connected to our throat chakra.
Okay.
Yep. Our cognizance, that's our knowing, that's our heart. And our clairsentience is our solar plexus chakra.
Wow.
So, yep. So it's connected to our chakra system.
Yeah.
I know that I'm taking things a little further and a little deeper.
That's all right.
Yeah.
No, that's like fantastic information, because as you're describing that, I'm like, oh my God, that makes sense.
Yes.
You know, that makes me understand a couple of things a little more. So I'm glad you described it like that.
Yeah, I love that, Melissa, because everyone doesn't understand each part of the body is dependent upon each part of the body, basically. I mean, think about it. When you have a headache, when you have a really bad headache, what happens? Right? You're like, leave me alone. I have a bad headache. You can't concentrate. You can't do your job. You can't. It's just, and all it is a headache. And not that I'm downplaying it, because sometimes it's a migraine or whatever, but it just affects everything. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you don't want to talk to your friends. You just kind of just go in a shell, right? And I think that's interesting to understand how our body is in line or in tune, if you want to say that.
Yeah, I agree with that, because if I get really overwhelmed or stressed, like it can manifest as a cold.
Yes.
Where I'm like, I know I'm not sick. You know what I mean? I know I'm not but I feel like I am, with it. But then when everything calms down, it's almost like it just disappears. And I'm like, I feel like that manifests for me anyways. I'm sure it's different ways for different people, but I definitely feel like that has been something that I've been trying to learn and work on, so that I don't bring on that kind of manifestation into my body. But again, that it's like you say, it's just a growing thing. And so now when I feel stressed out, I try to take a step back and be like, okay, what is it you can deal with right this minute? And is it life threatening? No. Okay. So then how can we deal with it appropriately without getting all and then starting to feel like I'm sick?
Right. It's about taking a step back and being in tune with yourself, your body, everything that's going on. And like you said, and then we stop and we prioritize and we really, really put things into perspective. Is this worth getting stressed out about? I mean, sometimes we need to have a little talk with ourselves.
Yeah.
Little pep talk, right? Yeah.
Yes. I'm like twice a day. All right. Stop it.
Get it together, Erin. Get it together, Erin.
I know. I'm running around like cleaning today, and I'm doing like 10 things at once. And I'm like, dude, like, take a step back. Like, you can only do one thing at a time. So where do we start?
Yes, absolutely.
I'll take a walk through the neighborhood, and I'm walking, and I know I'm having a little self-talk. And I'm sometimes I'm like, my lips are moving and I'm thinking the neighborhood, I'm the neighborhood, kook. I'm out walking and I'm having a little conversation with myself, but
yeah.
That's right. My neighbors know I'm insane. So I'm like, it's all good.
Yeah. It's all good. I do the same thing.
I can walk down the street and be like, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, there she goes again. Yeah. So I'm like,
or I'll grab my phone and pretend I'm talking to somebody. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, so, and then your phone rings, and you're like busted.
Hey!
Right.
So, Melissa, you have studied many, many things. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about because I've never heard of them. Yeah. And again, excuse my naivete here. So you've talked with shamanic healing.
Oh, yes.
That is... Give me a high overview. That would be great.
Yes. And that seems to be studying shamanism. Now, I wouldn't consider myself a shamanic healer. I mean, maybe just healing for myself, not for other people, because that could take years and years and years of study and you really have to get with a highly skilled teacher.
Mm.
And I've studied with a teacher, and it has mostly been about shamanic journeying. And that's where you're going into you're going into different worlds, the upper world, the middle world, the lower world. You may connect with animal spirits. And it's funny because I felt very, very called to shamanism. And I believe, now that I look back, it's like, wow, I really thought that my path was to be a shamanic healer, not just for myself, but for other people. And even though my path took a lot of twists and turns, I still feel like studying shamanism, going deep into meditation, put me on the path of mediumship. So that shamanism was I would say they were my roots. They were my beginner. That was my, that set me on the path.
Yeah.
So you connect with various spirits. It's very detailed. It's very in depth, but, so that is one of the many things I studied. And it's just interesting how, we believe, well, this is what I'm called to do. And then things can just twist and turn, you just really and truly don't know where you're going to land. And the best thing is to keep that open mind, because I may be doing what I'm doing now, and in a few years that could take me on another path.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's all like the journey of life, the journey of growth, and just like you say, you think you're going one way, and then next thing you know, you're like completely, and you're like, well, where did that come from? But this is cool, And so I have a question, if it's okay, if you don't mind, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so when you're investigating, because John was saying that you love to do paranormal investigations, which I just think that's so awesome. But as a medium, because I know when I go into a place and, I start getting hit with all kinds of stuff, and I'm just like, and I'm not that medium. I sensitive, so I couldn't even imagine being a medium. I'd be like, y'all need to back off.
Yes.
So what's that like as a full on, you can see, hear, and all that? What is that like being an investigator? Is that a little tougher, would you say?
Yes. Well, yes and no. I think it depends on the location. It depends on the location. And I remember the very first time that I hopped on with Phantom Detectives, and I went to our very first location, which is called the Selma Mansion, and it's in Norristown, Pennsylvania. And I remember first walking into that mansion. I opened the door. I felt like I was hit, like it was like a tidal wave. Receiving all of that information, all of the feelings. I felt like I just had to shut the door and go walk away and catch my breath.
Oh.
And so the one thing that I've learned is that it doesn't mean that it's negative. It isn't like it's a bunch of negative spirits.
Right.
It's just receiving so much.
Right.
Sometimes when there's a lot of spirits in one location and you're just picking up on so many different things, that's where it can be overwhelming. So that's the thing that I had to learn early on, that it doesn't mean that, something is trying to harm me. It's just receiving a lot of information.
Right.
A lot of people talking at you. You go into a room, like say you're at a family function and everyone's happy to see you and they want to all talk at you at the same time. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Settled in. So, but then there's other locations where it's much more peaceful. Maybe there's only two spirits that want to, talk and show me things, and I can kind of take my time in there. So it really depends on the location.
Right. Right. That's really neat. That's really interesting. But have you been, I have to ask it just as an investigator, have you been to a place where you were like, really, it scared the living poop out of you and you were just like, oh my God?
Yeah, well, I would say, the most Harmful places I've been in where it's frightened me. And sadly, it has been in people's homes.
Oh,
Yeah,
Okay.
there's been times there's certain rooms I'm like, I can't bring myself to go in here. I just can't. You just feel sick.
It's so interesting that you say that, because our paranormal team, okay, we don't do residential homes.
Okay.
We have twice, and after the second one, we're like, never, ever again are we doing that, because that was the scariest place we had ever been. And it wasn't the spirits that was scary. I was like, oh hell no, like we gotta go. And you want to talk about getting sick? I mean, I was railroaded by that place.
Really?
And it was like nothing I've ever experienced, and I really don't ever want to experience that again. Yeah, I left there, and I mean, I was ill. I was very ill, and it's very hard to explain. And I don't want to say too much because I would never do that, like publicly do that to somebody. But I just I can't even explain it. Like, I swear to God, I think this person was a serial killer or something. It was awful. I think I've told John about it. Do you remember me telling you about that? Or have I not?
I think a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, after that, we were like, nope, we're going to pay for our shit. We're going to pay for it. We don't need to do this. I mean, we never would charge anybody anyways. And if somebody came and said, hey, look, we really need some help, I'm sure if I wasn't comfortable, I would send it to somebody else who could absolutely do it, but I would never try to go in and fix somebody's home. I just don't feel like me as a person personally, I'm qualified to do that. And so I wouldn't. This was somebody asking us to do it because it's just a long story, but I was just like, yeah, we're done. This will never happen again. And so, so I can't even imagine like full on, God, I wish I could bring you to that place so that I could see what you would think, even though I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that to you because you'd be like, what was that? Like,
it's freaking because I leave there and I'm like, my goodness, I'm like, these people have to live in this home. It's just, how did they do it? And you see how it affects, everyone in there.
Right.
And there's been situations where now I still talk to this one family. It was probably one of the most nastiest locations, that I've been in. I hate to use that word. The family, they are so nice. They're wonderful people. And this thing that's living there, I think it was non-human. It's taking its turns on who it's going to pick on and affect. It's taking its turns with the adults in the house and with the children. And when they're outside of the home, they do not have these experiences.
Wow.
So it's very, very sad. It really is. So
and so now, is that actually attached to the house then? That entity?
I believe it is, and they're trying to figure out. The family feels that because this was a situation where, the man of the house, he's divorced, he's remarried. They're a beautiful blended family, but he feels that his prior marriage, somebody sent something to their home.
Oh my God!
He wholeheartedly believes that.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Even if it wasn't, the ex, but when, a friend who plays around with things, that are not nice, sent
that's
something.
Awful.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, with that too, I've heard this before too, which is maybe you can relate to a certain story to us. I heard a story from one of my mediums where she said she was helping this couple with their home. And the wife would say as soon as the husband got home, he was abusive to her. He would, unfortunately, hit her. And, he went to jail. But when he was outside the house, nicest guy you ever met in your life. Simple, nice guy. It's in that house. Immediately, like she said that, he would get in the house and then he would be in the house no matter like an hour. and all of a sudden he'd be yelling and screaming at her and be, abusive to her. And, she would like call, her friends over and they'd be like, stay at my house, whatever.
Yeah.
Then again, he's outside the house, it's nothing. So they eventually found out the house was haunted by this little boy spirit. The medium found out, but she's convinced it was a demon disguised as a little boy.
Child.
Anything similar to that.
Yeah. Well, I feel that certainly could be possible, and
That's
I
scary.
have heard that they will they will do that. They will pretend to be, like you said, child. They will mimic someone's loved one as well. So unfortunately, this home that I was just describing that has this nasty entity, unfortunately, the husband, he lost his mother. She lived with them. But they do not believe that, she was the nicest lady, so she would not be wreaking havoc in this house. But they have her voice. So they do question if there's something, they do feel that there's something nasty in their home. But
like mimicking.
Yes.
Right. So, that's so scary.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is trying to find somebody, something, somebody who is familiar with removing curses, for lack of a better word. I've cleared homes before. I actually cleared their home, and then a little while later, unfortunately, they started having experiences again, and this is very common.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm not at that level of removing curses and everything. So they're really actually trying to find somebody that can help them, because they put a lot of time and energy in rebuilding this home, making it a beautiful home. They're invested in it. And I'm sure it goes for a lot of homeowners to just say, okay, well, you just have to leave. That's
right. Yeah, a lot of people can't just do that,
Yeah, right.
And so, but I have heard stories like that quite a few times, where they said, hey, this house is haunted and all the men here have had issues. I've heard quite a few of those stories. That's quite frightening, to know that like somebody can be influenced like that, by a spirit. So.
Definitely. And I have learned, not with that home. With that home, I knew to ask for some kind of protection, protect myself. My team did the same in every way possible. So thank goodness when we left there, we were not affected. But we did learn a hard lesson before. Again, it was in a residential home. We investigated this gentleman's apartment. His activity was so bad in his bedroom, especially, that he would not sleep in there. He slept on the couch. Yes.
Oh man!
When you mean activity, what do you mean by like things thrown at him, like push, stretch?
Like poltergeist.
Yeah.
Yes. He was having poltergeist experiences, and he said, one time he was laying in bed and the covers were just ripped off of him. He just
my God.
Yeah, there was a horrible feeling in that room, and after that experience, said, no, I can't even be in this bedroom, in and out to get the things I need, and I'm certainly not sleeping in there. Yeah.
Right. So when you said that you guys learned a lesson, is there anything that happened that followed you or something?
Well, we did not do anything to protect ourselves.
Oh, okay.
So the one thing that happened to all of us is we were so energetically drained for a week. We described that we felt like we were hit by a truck. Yet nobody was sick with colds. Not the homeowner when we went in there, none of us. But we were so energetically drained when we left there, and so I do feel like that energy, that negativity, yeah, we felt like it sucked the life out of us. So.
Have you ever had a time where, I think this would be really sad, where you knew there was something mentally wrong with the person?
Good question.
We're like, we got to help this person because there's obviously, who knows what it could be, right?
What a good
you
question.
just noticed that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But
So,
but then
yeah.
how do you differentiate? I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
interrupt,
you're right.
but how do you differentiate? Because there's got to be people who they're like, they are mentally unstable. There's something really wrong with them. But actually, in fact, it's a manifestation. So how do you deal with
Yeah,
that?
right.
Like, how do you know?
Yes, it's very difficult sometimes to decipher
Mm,
what is really going on, and that
right.
the best thing that we can do beforehand, before we go into any investigation, is so after someone submits that intake form and describes
Mm,
their experiences, the
right.
other gentleman on our team, his name is Rick. He's our tech guy. He's our client relations person.
Mm,
So he conducts a phone interview
okay.
and asks them a series of questions to
Mm,
make sure that there's consistency.
right.
Yeah, sometimes they'll send footage over for us to, see for
Okay.
ourselves.
Well, that
And
makes sense. Yeah.
yes, yes. So the cool thing about Rick is that he was trained by MUFON. He was with MUFON for a while.
Sure.
So he's very good with interviewing clients, and he's very good with trying to see, like I said, what's really going on here.
Right. Right.
I would say the number one word is consistency.
Right.
So from there, then as a team, we take that information and we say,
Mm,
okay, do we feel like the person is this maybe a mental health issue, something that they think that
right.
they're seeing and experiencing? Does this person even have regular, like, physical health issues? And they think that
Right.
they're having
Right.
experiences with
Mm-hmm.
spirits. So there have been times
Yeah.
where we haven't taken on investigations because, that may be the case. They may be experiencing something mentally or physically that we feel like,
Mm,
this truly doesn't sound like it's paranormal, you know?
right.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a hard call. It is.
Mm,
So
Yeah. Yeah, I bet that is. Now, being
yeah.
that you're a mom, have you ever had a child spirit follow you home? Because, they see a
Oh,
mom and they're like, oh,
yeah.
mom, I don't have
And
a
they're like,
mom. Let's go.
I love
Yeah.
your gentleness. I'm coming with
Yeah,
you.
you seem like a very sweet person that you
Hmm.
and they're like, yay, mom, I'm going home with mom.
Well, the good thing is,
Yeah.
so far, yes, I haven't had any experiences where spirits have followed me home.
Mm.
But as far as still seeing them in the middle of the night, I still have those experiences. They are just not
Oh,
as often. And many
right.
times I have seen child spirits, and I've been able to describe what they're wearing, and it seems like sometimes they're from a different time period,
Oh,
and sometimes even we're like from like the 1980s. I'm thinking, wow, I'm like, the clothing they're wearing, you don't really see children wearing that now.
right.
So that's
Mm,
the only time I can honestly say where at home I've had
right.
those experiences, and I feel
Mm,
like they're just coming to me, just from the
mm,
spirit world, trying
right.
to get
Right.
my attention when I'm in that a certain state of consciousness. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. So I have another question. This is going to be a little on the silly side. Because as John was telling you, I had a podcast and it was actually called The Lighter Side of Paranormal. So I would talk about the funny stuff that goes on. I am going to keep the podcast going, but I'm totally rebranding, and yeah, something happened. I don't want to totally go into details, but it turned out that the producer of my podcast was a convicted felon, which, people have shit happen, but his particular felony is just not something I want to associate with. So
yeah.
I was like, all right, we're out. Bye. Good luck to you, but I'm gonna go. So I'm rebranding because I want to totally get away. I don't want to stop the podcast because I'm having a blast. I love talking to people, and it's so much fun to talk about the lighter side of paranormal because not everything is a bump in the night. Not everything is scary. And so on investigations, though, one of the things that me and my teammates are really good at is scaring the shit out of ourselves. Not intentionally, but you're walking down the hallway and you're like, oh, what is that? And then there's a big mirror and you're like, oh my God, it was me. That's horrible. And so, and like we do that all the time, not intentionally, but it is so funny. And we're like, and then we're cracking up and everybody's like, man, y'all, what is wrong with y'all? And I'm like, I don't know. But so that's what my podcast is about. So I'm rebranding. I'm going to carry on with that. But that leads to my question, because I do love talking to people about that stuff that does go on, because every investigation, like we have something that's so ridiculous and we're like, what? Or like a pervy spirit and you're like, dude, get off of me, just stuff like that. So what is your most memorable, funny thing that happened while you guys are on an investigation, or just through your mediumship, like that you were just like, just dying laughing?
Yeah. Well, funny, well, as far as like, my paranormal team being goofy, someone will be in the bathroom. Like, okay, so we just,
that's already funny.
Yeah. Stayed in a restaurant and we had to wait until, the restaurant was closed. So this was our very first late night investigation. So very rarely do we have the opportunity to like investigate, say from like 10 p.m. until like wee hours in the morning. They tend to be afternoon, and then by 10 p.m. we're wrapping it up, just because the homeowners, we're not invited to spend the night. Come on, they want to go to bed too, and
sure,
these mansions and museums, they have to close up shop. They're not saying
right.
Just investigated a restaurant. So yes, there's just the three of us in this big place, and someone's in the bathroom. So the other one decides to bang on the door, and right? So
you're like, I couldn't poop, but now I can.
Well, I did poop, but it's going the right place.
Kick out of that. I'm like, then you're the person's absolutely frightened. It's like, okay, is that a spirit knocking on, scaring them, or is it one of us? So,
God,
I love that.
So that was definitely funny.
That's awesome.
But we had a spirit play a joke on us.
Okay.
Nice.
Yes. So the location was the Sanderson Museum, and this is in Chaddsford, Pennsylvania. And we were on our paranormal team. The doors were locked. We set up shop downstairs, all of our belongings and everything. And we were upstairs investigating. And me and my team member Rick we started walking down the steps, and all our belongings were on the steps, like boxes of just stuff, things we brought in.
Oh my God.
They were all it was like something was trying to barricade us up there and thought it was funny.
Oh my God.
We just looked at each other. We just looked at each other like, how on earth did this happen?
My God.
Yes, we're looking for the logical explanation. Even as an investigator, you're still looking for that logical explanation.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but we could not find one.
Wow.
Because again, the doors were locked.
Yeah.
I thought if someone managed to get in and play a joke, well, they did not steal our valuables. Wallets there. Would you really just break in place just to,
move somebody?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Funny.
Yeah, and then we did an EVP session later, and we asked, did anybody, try to barricade us at the step? And we basically got a response, yes, be afraid. So,
wow.
They're like, we want you to stay.
I would say,
oh my God.
That was the most, that was the time where we literally just stopped and scratched our heads. Like, how is this possible?
That's so crazy.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think I'd be laughing at that too. I'd be like, all right, now, spirit.
Yeah, come on. Who do you think you are, right?
Yeah. I was going to tidy my stuff up. All right.
Yeah, come on. you said this really neat, like, ghost or
Right.
something, right? That OCD or
Oh
something.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's funny. Oh
so
my god.
now that I have Erin here, Erin can help me interpret this question. Melissa, if I offend you, I'm sorry, but you're an attractive woman. I have to ask, has any ghost ever been a little too fresh?
Yes. Oh man.
Yeah, I think I know I've had situations of something, touching my backside, and and then I'm looking at my team
Mm.
members. They're way behind, like, I'm like, all right, and they wouldn't do that anyway. My goodness, we're not people, but of course we're looking for the live person around you, like, okay,
Right.
Yeah, right. If someone, yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's so unexpected.
So-
yeah.
Because I was telling Erin offline that one of my mediums said she was in this house and she was haunted by this one ghost who was kind of a jerk when he was alive, and they did the history of it. And she said she was walking, and your husband, where he'll come around you and he give you a hug, it's very romantic hug, give you a kiss on the neck. Well, she felt that the spirit had, like, put her arms around her, and her response was perfect. She said, "I'm married." That was it. It, like, ended like that. Like, she was serious. Like, she was like, you would say to someone who's been a little too fresh at a party or something, right? After too many drinks.
Yeah.
And she just went, she could feel his breath too. She said she could feel him, like he's getting fresh, right? And she, like I said, I just love that she turned around and just said, "I'm married."
I'm married.
And that was it.
Oh, buddy. You mind your manners, yes.
Yep.
Right. And that's the thing I always wonder. When you go into a home knowing that there might be some type of spirit in there that maybe you did research on, that maybe is not the greatest guy. And let's be honest, in the 1800s, men did not treat their wives very well at all, for the most part. I don't want to throw everyone in there, but do you ever go, when you go into a house and do you ever say something like, "Hey, Jack, I know you did this, blah, blah, blah. This will not work with me. I want to be respectful of you. You're respectful of me." You ever say something like that?
Yes. Well, many of times we don't go into locations alone, even especially if you're going into yes, a basement. I mean, my biggest thing is, okay, it's one thing to, you're an investigator, and sure, there's a side of you feel brave, but you also have to use common sense, because if I'm going into an old rickety something, I don't want to trip over anything, or if I don't have like a proper flashlight, you do have to use common sense. So
totally.
I've gone into places where that there's been there were men, like here's an example. The very last location we were in, I knew I picked up on that outlaws hung around this restaurant at one point in time.
Yeah.
And you had this sense of, you had this feeling of, they do not respect women. So you're a little bit more, like you said, standing your ground.
Yeah.
You're not going to let them, make you feel fearful. And, and we've been in other locations where a similar situation back in those times, as you said, 1800s. These other locations, we found out that, there was a murder there, and, a man had murdered, a lot of times these places will be brothels. So
brothels, the worst.
Yes.
Many of them, though. So many of them back in the day.
Yeah, everything was a brothel.
Yeah, you find out. Of course, they try to hide it, and then you're like,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep. And, we've, our equipment, especially with dowsing rods, we would ask, is there anyone here that you want to hurt? You don't want here? And the rods would point right to me.
No.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, And then, my two investigators, the guys, they're like, you're not going to hurt her. We're here and we're,
Good.
Right.
Nice.
You're not going to do a darn thing.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
Do you do personal reading?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I do one-on-one mediumship readings. And again, it's funny how our paths will twist and turn, because there was a time where I would say, well, I don't use divination tools when I do readings. Well, that took a major turn, because now I also read tarot and I teach tarot.
Okay.
And yep. So, I still do mediumship readings, but then tarot really became, I don't want to say more so my thing. It just seems like that's been the request lately.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So, what it comes down to, mediumship is, you're connecting with spirits. And tarot, it's more about like life readings. You're connecting with the person psychically.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
you're connecting with the person in front of you, and tarot is
Interesting.
just a tool. Yes.
Okay.
So,
And the most questions you're asked, let me guess, because I've asked every medium of this, is relationships and financial advice.
Or children, maybe.
Maybe children, family.
yeah, you can only go by what you're tuning into.
Okay.
And it's okay if people ask me questions, but many of times, what I like is that most folks sit in front of me with an open mind. They just say, what are you tuning into? And that's the best way to go about it. That's the best way. So
that's what I was told. You got to have that open mind, because all the mediums have told me, as well as you, if you have a closed mind, it's not going to work. It's just you're just wasting your time. And Erin, you were going to say something?
No, I was just kind of going along with what you said, just out of curiosity, and this might be a little too morbid, maybe, I don't know. That's just where my brain goes. I don't know. There's something wrong with me.
I can relate.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, yeah.
Boy, this is where I get canceled. This is where I get canceled, folks.
No, this is why you asked me to co-host, so that I can ask the really dumb questions. Saves you, because then you can be like, it wasn't me, it was her.
It was Erin's fault.
She's not coming back on, so there. I was just curious, like, have you ever done a reading, though, where you did get sort of a vision or impression or what have you, and it wasn't a good outcome? And then how do you deal with that?
Yeah,
like, how would you tell that person, hey, look, like, how, seriously, because I think I would be a little chicken to say that to somebody, and it would upset me. So how do you deal with stuff like that?
Yeah, it is very difficult, because now I also tune into, it's funny, because when I do readings, I tell the client who I'm reading for, I also tune into living people, and again, the magic word is energy, because whether they're here or there, there's been times I've given readings and the client would say, okay, well, you described my parents, but they're here. But there's always a reason, and I'll pick up on the person's illness, and I'm just feeling that this illness is not. It's going to really take a turn for the worst. But I don't feel comfortable telling that the person. I just feel like it's not the right thing to do. So I might say, okay, are they having are they struggling to breathe? Like, is there something maybe with emphysema?
Sure.
And they might say, yes, yes, they're struggling to breathe. This is what's going on. So I'm not getting a good picture. So I just leave it at that and say, okay, I'm tuning into that person has had a rough road, having a hard time. Now, when a person has crossed over, and I've picked up on that, the circumstances were unpleasant. Maybe they've overdosed. They took their life. You really have to use tact. You can't.
Sure.
I don't like to ask, well, did the person commit suicide?
Right.
I'll say, was their passing sudden and unexpected? I really try to use my words. I mean, it's hard to lost this person. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's touchy. It's a very delicate, you
Yeah,
got to approach it
absolutely.
very delicately. You really, really
Yeah.
do. And it's
Oh,
hard.
absolutely.
Yes, because you know what? I will cry during a reading with the person,
Mm.
and you're trying to
Mm.
remain professional, but you're also you're compassionate.
Yeah, you're a person. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know what?
Yeah.
If I cry with them, we're just it seems like they're connecting with me even more. They like their reading
Right.
even more because it isn't the sterile cold reading. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
You're connecting so deeply with their situation and with their loved one and how hard it is,
Mm-hmm.
and you're feeling that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's it can be very tough, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
approach it very delicately when there's unpleasant circumstances. You do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
I
reminds.
couldn't
Oh,
imagine.
go ahead, Erin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying I couldn't imagine, and that's why I wanted to ask, because you do seem like a very compassionate and empathetic person. And so I could see you being that loving when you talk about that, And so I just was really curious.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
That's something that happened to me. My one of my friends 2 years ago passed away suddenly, and I've known him since
Oh,
elementary school. Like, okay,
oh,
we've been through everything, right? And
yes.
unfortunately, he did take his own life because he
Oh,
was having some very mental issues that were going on that were
yeah.
really tough on him. And I would
Oh,
take him out to dinner
mm,
and try to get him out of the house and trying to get him away from all this stuff.
right.
And when he died, I took it upon myself to blame me that I had something to do with it, right?
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was just terrible that I felt this way. And everybody's like, no, you didn't. You did all this stuff. And then his mom and
Right.
dad, who are still alive, are like, no, you did everything. And eventually she went to a psychic, and a very nice one. And the psychic basically through my friend got contact with him and he told the psychic to tell me it's okay. It wasn't your
Oh,
fault.
yeah.
You're gonna be fine. I worry about you, but you'll be fine.
Mm.
And her mom told me that, and I was just bawling like a little baby.
Aw.
I was just
Yeah.
crying. But you see something like
Aw.
that, right? Where it's so
Yeah.
personal,
Right.
where you take it personally upon yourself that
Mhm.
friend of yours did that, and you take that, but you have someone like yourself and people in the industry that say nice things and that say
Mm.
rather than I'm not going to tell you, but
Right.
I'm going to
Right.
tell you in a
Right.
very professional and courteous way, right? So I
Yeah.
love that.
Yes,
That's awesome.
definitely. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how when I do a reading, how the message could be for
Mm.
somebody else. So, like in this case, your friend's mom went to the psychic, but yet you got a
Right.
message out of it
Correct.
too. So I
Mhm.
love how that can happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
isn't that great? Isn't that great?
It really
Yeah.
is.
So, Melissa, we can talk to you for hours. I'm sure
I
Erin's
know.
spinning with more questions and I'm spinning more questions. But you've been very gracious of your time, and we'd love to have you back on again,
Love to be back on.
especially
Yes.
around the spooky season. I've
Yes.
been telling all my mediums I'd love to have you back on during October and stuff because I'm trying to do a special, I don't know, things with mediums and paranormal investigators because it's kind of like our Christmas. I know that's a
Mm.
weird way of saying that, but it is, right? It's like if
Yeah.
you love Halloween as much as us,
Oh,
that's the
Oh,
time
I
where you can
believe it. I live and
dig
breathe.
in, right?
Yeah.
So would
Yes.
love to have you back
Yes.
on to talk about these
Yeah.
things. But before I let you go, please tell my spooky friends what you got going on and how they can get a hold of you if they would like, and if you do something like that, if they're looking to get their home investigated or maybe do a reading or anything like that.
Sure, absolutely. So I do have a website, and it's www.psychicmediumautumn.com. And my name on my website is Autumn Melissa, so that's where the autumn comes, because it's so funny. We're talking about spooky season. I mean, that's why it had to be autumn, Melissa.
Yeah.
I just
Love
love that time of year. I feel like I come alive. So yep, psychicmediumautumn.com. And you can find me on Facebook too under Autumn Melissa. I do have a Facebook page. and our paranormal team, phantomdetectives.org.
Right.
And that's where
Awesome.
you can reach out. Yep, for investigations. And under Phantom Detectives, my website is on there as well. So, you'll find me there too. Yep. So hopefully we're easy to reach if we can help anybody, or if I can, help someone individually. Or me, we are more than happy to.
I love it. You're an amazing person,
awesome.
amazing guest. Like I said, love to have you back on. When the episode comes out,
Yes.
I will put all the links in the episode, and I will promote you on all my social media sites. I'm sure Erin would definitely friend you because I'm sure she has some more questions about things. And maybe you guys could do a tag team down the road. Who knows?
I was just going to say that.
Together.
We need to do a swap cast as soon as I get my stuff up together. Yeah, it shouldn't be but another week. I would say maybe 2, but I would love to have you on. We're definitely a little more goofier on my podcast, though. So just to warn you.
Yeah.
Yay!
So you get the best of both worlds.
That's right.
You can just
That's great.
be goofy and just say, and then you can be sort of goofy and sort of serious. We get some questions answered. I love it. I love it. So we end every podcast by saying this. I pretty much say the same thing: is say hi to your ghost, because you might have a ghost in your house. Say hello, ghost.
Yep.
Yeah, no, not here. Bye.
Except for Erin, but you still can say hi. And stay spooky. Thank you so much, Melissa. Erin, love it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Melissa.